I was not an easy nurser. I was very anxious. I was an older mom. My first child was born when I was 34, and my younger son was born when I was 35, because they're 18 months apart to the day. And I can remember vividly getting very anxious when my baby, especially my first baby, wanted to nurse, and we'd be like out in the mall. That was like our big outing, because in the winters we could just, go to the mall and see people. And I would like make haste for the nearest department store and find my way to a dressing room where it was private. And it was very different with my second baby, because by the second baby I had support. I had people, nursing mothers for support. I met Patty, I met Annie, and I became active in the Latham NY because of Patty. And that's when I started to feel more comfort and ease, and more like, this is my right to nurse my child when my child is hungry. That's why I'm nursing, so that my baby doesn't have to wait for me to open a can or warm a bottle. And it was much easier with the second baby, especially after the nursing. But it was not easy. I was a very nervous first-time mother, and I'm very glad that we made things change.
I had a very different perspective, actually. My mother was probably one of the few who was nursing in the 60s when I was a baby. She nursed all four of us. And she said she got weird looks from all of her friends, but so to me, I never even thought twice about it. I knew I was going to be nursing, and I was determined to do it, and I never thought about it. But I do remember being at dinner parties and whipping out a toddler, and someone saying to me, "Could you please do that?" It's like at the table at a dinner party, like no one wanted to see that. And it was, and I was totally covered up, but just the thought that I was doing that was shunned. No one wanted to see it. And the same thing at restaurants. Everyone was staring at you when you would do it at a restaurant, even very discreetly, with a towel over the baby's head. So I remember being very perplexed by this, because to me it seemed so natural, and I was all covered up. But just when people knew you were doing that, it made them very uncomfortable. It was strange.
Yeah. I remember back then doing a lot of nursing in the car when we were doing outings. I would nurse the baby in the car before we would go in and out of places, hoping that the baby would hold over. But by the time I had my third and my fourth, I was nursing everywhere. And people didn't, I don't think I've ever had anybody approach me and ask me to leave. Well, I was the La Leche League leader at the time, and our La Leche League group had received a phone call from a mom who told us that she was asked to leave the food court in a local mall because she was feeding her baby. So we were rather surprised and really felt that we wanted to support her and do something about it. So we made some calls, and we reached out to a couple of people that are sitting here with us today, and somehow we came about deciding to start with the nursing.
I don't know if
that was a good starting point.
I think that was my idea.
It's a great idea.
I first heard it from you, Patty, and I got so outraged that I started calling people. I called Robin Galinsky, according to that paper you have, who then reached out to the ACLU, which is, I guess,
New York Civil Virginia.
Right. Yeah. And apparently we had a first organizational meeting at my house, and then a second. It looked like we had like 2 or 3 planning meetings, and divvied up the work in getting the nursing organized.
And it was before the internet and before cell phones.
Right.
And we had phone trees.
Right. We had phone trees. We met and we said, okay, who do you know? And that's how things branched out.
Right.
It was mother to mother to mother.
Can you imagine if we'd had Facebook back then?
Oh,
we would have had
thousands of people.
Oh my gosh. That would have been really something.
But that's really how it was. It was mother to mother to mother to mother. Right. I remember being responsible for calling the media, so I called all the TV stations and the radio stations and the press. And did you get Dr. Moran?
No, Michelle Sanchez, who was nursing with us at the Mother Center, who was a nurse at Albany Med, got Dr. Moran. an already med doctor, you know.
How many women were there when we, at the nursing? Do you
I think
know?
the newspaper estimates said 100 to 150, if I recall.
The newspaper estimates were all over the map, from 40, which was way low, to
Yeah,
about, I think it was about 85. I think that's a realistic. Some of the newspapers had it right on, and some said more, but it seemed, it was a huge number of women,
Big
and
crowd.
we took up the floor space.
Right.
Most
Yeah.
people were sitting on the floor, which
Yeah,
was
I remember
great,
sitting on the floor.
and nursing, you know, all manner of babies, from teeny weeny to toddlers.
I got a million, totally unexpected. I thought we were done. We did the nursing. I thought we made our point. The next day my phone didn't stop ringing off the hook. I got calls from everywhere, radio stations, newspapers, TV shows. I mean, Lisa Gibbons did a show on breastfeeding, and the nursing mother, Liza Habibi, and I went out there to film a show about breastfeeding.
And tell about why it was a short trip.
It was we had to do it in 24 hours because my 3-year-old was still nursing, and I couldn't bear to be apart from him for too long. So we literally did a 24-hour turnaround trip.
Right.
And Patty made sure I had a breast pump, and knew how to hand express, because that's how I got through that 24 hours without my baby.
Wow.
And I went out to LA with Liza Habibi for a different show with Sarah Purcell, and I can't remember. Was yours called The Home Show or was mine?
I don't remember.
Anyway, so she was in a great demand, Liza. She did a lot of radio shows, even down south, I remember, the next day. But Senator Lack and from Long Island and Susan John from Rochester had introduced this legislation before, and it had never made it off the floor. So when, right after the nursing, they introduced it again and it passed, he personally called me out my office and said, I just want you to know, and you can tell all the nursing mothers, that this is what put it over the edge, and this was the first time we've been successful getting it off the floor, and we did it. So he supplied several of us with these pen certificates because of it, which was amazing. So breastfeeding in New York was not illegal before. In fact, in 1984, it was taken off the obscene category. So breastfeeding was not indecent exposure as of 1984, which seems crazy now that we think about it so late. But so breastfeeding was legal in New York anyway, but this sort of codified it. This made it so that if you messed with a woman who was breastfeeding, you could face charges.
Well, I remember when we were trying to bring, get this law passed. We were walking the hallways of the legislative office building. There were all these moms and babies, and I remember feeling like so proud and empowered walking with all these moms. And I mean, literally, there were strollers, there were baby carriers, and we were just, walking and talking about, how moms really needed this right.
I just had a great idea. On the anniversary of the law, we should do an annual nursing.
There we go. just to bring back emphasis.
Wouldn't that be something?
Well, there were recently, I don't remember how many years ago, at the New York State Museum, a woman was approached and asked to stop nursing, and they did the same thing. They had a nurse in, but they had the law. This time they had the law on their side, so we could say, there's a law. Many people are not aware of it.
I remember seeing that
Yeah.
and getting this sort of very sad feeling, like
it's still happening.
history repeating itself. Like, how sad this is still an issue. It shouldn't be.
Right.
Other states did have nursings after ours as a, well, if they can do it, we can do it. I remember that. Shortly after ours, I thought it was in Florida. I remember reading about one.
It was. It was. I remember that was Florida.
And you still, even today, there are still some states that are coming on board with the law. I think probably just about all of them now. But it was amazing to me that we actually had to have a law
Right.
to protect our moms from feeding their babies.
It's incredible.
And of all places, in a food court.
And, you know, we were just reminiscing before we started shooting this, and we were shocked to remember that the New York Times wrote an op-ed about it, and it was covered in all the local papers and beyond, in the New York City papers too, so it was a big deal. We weren't thinking about it at the time that it was a big deal because we were in the moment.
And it was, to us, it was local. It was like, you know, you can't do this to a nursing mother in our food cart. I mean, you know, malls in winter are sanctuaries
Exactly.
for women with young children, families with young children,
Right.
because the kids can run around, they're not cooped up in the house. And to have feeding your child be an issue in your sanctuary where you're spending money and supporting businesses
Right.
is really horrible.
Well, and it hampered a woman's right to move about freely, to free associate, to shop for her family. If you can't feed your baby when it needs to be fed every hour and a half, when it's an infant, then you can't go out. You just simply can't go out. So, Jay Leno actually mentioned it in his monologue I had in my
Oh
notes.
gosh, I
a few
remember
times.
that, yeah. Yeah, and then I remember being on radio talk shows, they had people calling in, and, you know, it was just all over the news.
I think it was, I guess because pretty universally for me, everybody I knew was a nursing family at the time. So it was great. It was just a great sense of community, and the ripple that, you know, as Annie's told you, all the people that got involved, it really went from mother to mother. We wove this web of support and conviction that made this great thing happen. It was entirely a community doing. You know, it just, the three of us sitting here like one strand of this big web that made this happen.
You know, it's amazing how we were able to reach out to so many different areas in our area and organizations. You know, we had the La Leche group and the Mother Center, and, you know, people from their churches, their synagogues. It was just, you know, everybody was reaching out, and even before internet, you know, that's...
Because I have the sign-in sheet from the organizational meetings. There's only there's less than a dozen names on there. And it was the quivering of that web and the sending out of contacts that got, you know, somewhere around 80 to 100 people in that food court that day to make this statement.
So your children now are adults.
They are.
Well, you know, when you think about it, and so I bet you they're kind of proud, and I bet you they're quite the supporters.
You know, just yesterday when I was looking through my stuff to get ready for today and reminiscing and thinking, oh my gosh, this is 20 years ago. I realized that my 15-year-old sitting there had never heard any of this, and she said, Mom, why didn't you tell me any of this? This is amazing. You did that?
That's great.
You guys did that? It wasn't a law? You all sat there and breastfed on, you know, on camera? Oh my gosh, she was so proud. She thought it was the coolest thing she'd ever heard.
Oh, I bet.
She made me show her all the clippings, and it was neat. But I do have to say, one funny thing is that my mom, who, as I said earlier, was an early breastfeeder in the 60s and an ardent feminist, and she's a lawyer too, and she did employment discrimination for women plaintiffs who had been fired from their jobs or harassed at their jobs. She, her comment to me was, wait, you're not going to breastfeed in public? You're not going to breastfeed on camera, are you? And I said, it's okay, Mom, we'll handle it. Yeah. But that was funny.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, we really tried to change things for mothers everywhere, and the great thing was how it went, you know, beyond New York State. But still today, women are questioned when they're, you know, simply feeding their baby. It amazes me. We do not see enough women nursing in public.
I make it my personal mission is when I see a mother breastfeeding, if she's not talking or otherwise busy, I smile and say, how wonderful,
Yeah.
you know, just to counteract whatever negative experiences she might have had. Be nice to think that women today have a little bit more ease about it, and it troubles me greatly when I see the same issue come up in the press, like the one you mentioned earlier, Patty, that it shouldn't happen anymore.
Is that I think that the hospitals need to do a better job of, some of them do. I have a friend who actually, she's a lactation consultant at Albany Med, and so that's what she does, is teach new moms how to breastfeed and make sure that they're successful before they leave. Because contrary to maybe common perception, it's hard. It's not a natural thing to just breastfeed. It takes a little skill to get it right, to get the baby on there right, to latch on correctly. And I think I wasn't doing it right at first, and I didn't, it took someone to teach me how to do it. So I think the more the hospitals support this, the more nursing mothers there will be out there.
Let's say for any new nursing mom is find a tribe. Find a tribe, because I would not have been a happy nursing mom with a happy, healthy baby, really, if I had not had my tribe.
Yeah.
And I certainly wouldn't have been able to comfortably do extended nursing if I didn't have a tribe where that was the norm. Find a tribe where it's the norm, and you'll have all the support you need. And if you need to make another nursing because someone hassled you, you know where to call.
Right. Calling La Leche League is a great first step.
And
Yeah, and I know that I certainly would not have nursed as long as I had without the support of La Leche League and all the other women that I saw doing it, because it's not the normal thing to nurse a baby, into their first, second year or beyond. And when I work with new moms, I talk to them about how to nurse comfortably in other situations, because often they're new moms and it's very awkward, and I will tell them to try it in front of the mirror. And practice nursing in public. Go out with a friend and do it, because, that's one of the beauties of breastfeeding. You can do it anywhere, and you can meet your baby's needs immediately, but you're not always sitting on your living room couch. So I really help her to practice so she can be comfortable with it.
Well, when I got to Albany, when I had my first baby, I was new in town, and it was my sister who said, you should call La Leche League. And I did, and that was the first moms I met was at my first meeting at La Leche League, and that's where I found out about the Mother Center, which is where I spent most of my time.
Yeah. That support, I felt so alone in the beginning, and in my life, I hadn't been exposed to a lot of breastfeeding. I was the first one in my family to nurse, and it was so important just to be with other moms that were nursing, and often many of them were staying home with their babies, and we would do parks and playgrounds, and it's like it's a lifetime network, of moms.
Absolutely. When I talk about Patty and Annie and a couple of other friends who were involved in the nursing, Sandy Evans, who's also a Leche League leader, and I look back and I think, when we're still friends, and I talk about us to other people, I say we nursed our babies together. In other words, that's how I define this cohort. That's how important it was to have that support, to network with other mothers. And that's where not only did we do our nurturing of our own families, but we found our power to change the law in New York State was mother to mother to mother.